Story 1. We are from the Southeast United States, and every year at Christmas since she was a little girl, she had watched the Rockefeller Christmas tree lighting ceremony in New York City. I had an opportunity to get us to New York City for the first time for a day right around Christmas. We spent the day touring the city, and later that night we made a stop in Rockefeller Plaza to see the tree, and I proposed there. When I got down on one knee, she cried. I got stepped on because it's New York City and everyone is looking up at the tree, not at the guy proposing, and she said yes. Story 2. My wife had said she thought it would be cool to get engaged on a mountain, but we live in Minnesota, so I convinced her to take a half day off work and go up the north shore of Lake Superior. I picked an overlook we hadn't been to yet, we hiked up through the snow, and I proposed at the top. I thought it was going to be super obvious from the start, but she wasn't expecting it for another month or two, so she was still surprised. Oh, also, my sister got engaged on my dad's birthday, so I picked my mom's birthday because I thought it was funny. Edit. For all those asking, it was Fantasia Overlook, which is near Tetegausch. Story 3. We were in Cuba visiting her family. I was waiting for the perfect time. However, it was incredibly humid in August when we went, and the entire time we were drenched. I waited until one night when we went out to see a salsa show and proposed to her in the street of the town where her family is from, with her grandmother's engagement ring. She had given it to me a few months back when I told her. I waited until there was no one around since she hates being the center of attention and wouldn't want a bunch of people around. She said yes. Story 4. I wrote a poem, and one night while laying in bed, I gave her the poem while watching TV. She read it, and while teary-eyed, I pulled out the ring and asked. She said yes immediately, and it's been almost 5 years now. I thought about doing some big, elaborate proposal, but this seemed like the simple, sweet method that fit with our relationship. Sometimes it's not always about putting on a big show. Story 5. We were lying in bed, in the middle of the day, fully clothed, just snuggling. After months of hesitating with the ring already in hand, the moment struck me, and I knew I was ready. I also knew I needed to act quickly while I had the courage. I got out of bed, went to where I was hiding the ring in the closet, and lay back down. I said, "Will you?" She said, "Yes," and pressed her face into mine for a kiss. Story 6. Lost my grandmother to cancer, who I grew up with for a large part. I was sitting during the evening after she parted and thought I would not have been able to go through this terrible ordeal without her. So I was brushing my teeth, thinking how I should propose to her. So I spat out the toothpaste, went to her only wearing my underwear, orange with monkeys on it, and went down on my knees and proposed. No ring, nothing. She accepted, and we went and bought rings the day after. Still married for 12 years now. She still keeps that ugly old pair of underwear because she thinks it is so hilarious. Story 7. In the woods. My wife was adamant at the time that she didn't want people around, and that if there was a crowd she'd say no out of pure nerves. So it was Halloween and we went for a hike. During the hike, we would stop to take pictures every so often. Little did she know, in each picture, I was holding the ring in an inconspicuous position but clearly visible to the camera. As we got deeper into the hike, it really could only have gone one of two ways. Either I was taking her somewhere secluded to murder her, or a marriage proposal, which I feel is the right level of fear. Eventually, we broke through the trees to a river and rested. As I said, it was Halloween, and we were still deciding if we were going to dress up for the party we were going to that night. Last minute, I know. Finally, the moment was upon us. As she stood up to get moving again, she asked, "Well, I guess we still have to figure out what to go as." To which I responded while getting on one knee, "Well, you could go as my fiancé." She had no clue what happened. Her eyes went wide. She said yes, and then immediately began to ask where the hell I pulled the ring from so smoothly. I showed her the pictures along the trail, telling her to look closely at them. We never made it to the party. Story 8. I plan on doing it under the Aurora Borealis, Norway, with our coats on. Yes, the place doesn't matter, but I always thought it might be fun doing it like that. Story 9. I proposed to mine at the top of the Shard in London. I was fine right up to the moment when random people kept getting in the way. First, she then thought I was scared of heights. Eventually, I managed to get a security guard to give me a bit of breathing room, and then bam, done. Married 2 years now, 2 kids, and 2 Labradors. Story 10. My wife and I had been discussing marriage as a possibility, and I had taken her ring hunting to get an idea of her tastes. What she didn't know was that every ring she liked, I went back and put on layaway. Later, also unbeknownst to her, I went back and chose the one I liked best, bought it, and canceled the rest. A month later, we started exploring venues. Again, purely just scoping places out. The first one we visited, we fell in love with, and they had an opening when we wanted it. So we jumped in, signed the contract, and paid the deposit that day. All this happened while I had her ring in my pocket. Then I said we wanted to take one more walk around and grab a few pictures. We were out by the pond, and I asked the owner of the property to grab a picture of the two of us. That's when I got down on one knee, about 20 yards behind the altar, with the pond as a backdrop, and got a great photo of her freaking out. About 10 minutes after we set the date and booked the venue, and yet still made it a complete surprise. Story 11. We went on a weekend backpacking trip and almost turned around because of the heavy rain on the first day. But we persevered and found an amazing campsite on the second night. We were hanging out in the tent, looking at the mountains above us, and I just asked. Story 12. Man, I planned like 5 or 6 different ways to propose to her, and she would unintentionally ruin the plans because of timing conflicts or something, she said. One day, we were visiting her sister out of town, and spontaneously I was like, "Do you want to go to Subway and get food?" She said yes. We got Subway, and I asked, "Do you want to go to the park and eat?" She actually said yes. We went to a nice countryside park overlooking a lake, and after we were done eating, I proposed. She said yes. But man, did she make my planning soul work. She's worth it, though. Story 13. My plan had been to make her a treasure map which would lead her to me waiting in a meadow with a picnic basket, and then I would pop the question when she arrived. I didn't get a chance to do that, though, as she proposed first. Story 14. My husband and I have a fun agreement that if I have my nails painted, then I don't have to do dishes because they will chip faster. I had just finished painting my nails on an October night while working full-time and taking courses for a master's degree. My husband asks me to please wash the dishes. I make a fuss and pretty much stomp my feet while mouthing off. Not in a rude way, just, "Why now? I'm tired. Blah, blah, blah." Our old 600 square foot apartment had the sink facing the wall, and your back would be towards everything else. The only things in the sink were a spoon and a butcher knife. So as I'm washing and mouthing off, my husband takes the living room candle, throws rose petals all around the floor, and is like, "Clearance denied. Shut up. I'm trying to be romantic." I turn around with the knife in hand, looking like, "What?" and drop it immediately with tears and excitement. 17 years we've been together. He's my favorite. Story 15. I said it the moment the thought popped into my head. Do you want to hear something scary? We should get married. We were 20 and still in college. Last week, we celebrated our 38th anniversary. Story 16. We met as members of opposing pub trivia teams. I got in with the guy who ran it. The last category was wedding movies, and at the end, he passed me the microphone. I have a trivia question for her name. Will you marry me? She said yes. We got married a little over a year ago. Story 17. Mine was really horrible. Someone in my family had just died earlier that morning. We were in bed now, and I was completely broken with sadness, bawling like a kid at 3 a.m. or something. I had also taken my sleeping pills. Those pills were powerful enough that they should normally knock me out. I was prone to sleep-talking, sleepwalking, and much more while under those pills, and I wouldn't remember any of it the next morning. The fact that I was still awake 2 hours after taking them was a pretty big indication of how messed up I was. Then, in the middle of it, I realized that I had a woman with me who supported me, loved me, and would always be there for me, so I kind of blurted out, "Will you marry me?" She half laughed and half cried because she didn't expect it. She said yes. Eventually, I fell asleep. She didn't sleep much. She knew full well that I would possibly not remember it the next day, and that anything I said under the pills couldn't be taken seriously. When we woke up, she asked me if I recalled last night, And I said yes. I told her that I was serious. She cried again. We went ring shopping the next weekend. She cried again when we bought it. I think it finally hit her that it was happening for real. She teases me a lot regarding that, saying that I ruined one of the most romantic moments I could have given her. Again, teasing. Story 18. We went to a cabin in the hills for a long weekend, and we were playing this relationship card game where you take turns asking each other questions about yourselves or your relationship. I'd stack the deck, so he'd have to ask me things like, "Why do you love me?" Or, "What do you think is the next step in our relationship?" And I could do the whole proposal as a fake spontaneous response to those questions. At the end, I turned over my last card, which was a fill-in-your-own question on which I'd written, his name, "I love you. Will you marry me?" I pulled the ring out of my pocket, put it on top of the card, and slid it over to him. I thought he'd caught on by then, because he knew I was planning to propose sometime, but he actually hadn't, so he turned super red and started crying and just kept saying my name. Then I realized I should get on one knee, but he'd already said yes. Story 19. During a game of We did not play test this at all. I used one of the blank cards to make a custom card called Proposal, then hid it up my sleeve so that I could sneak it into my hand and play it. The problem was, she kept getting knocked out before I had a turn. I had to force everyone to play 3 times before I could pull it off. Story 20. I didn't ever propose. Mrs. Smith mentions how she'd love to go to the ice hotel in Sweden. The conversation is flowing, and you can get married there. Next thing I know, preparations are underway for us to get married. Pretty sure I was tricked, but it was a great time. Story 21. I just asked her one day when she got home from work while wearing a tuxedo inside the house for no discernible reason. I would probably do it a little differently if I had the choice to do it again. Laughing out loud. Story 22. We went to a park on the waterfront for a walk that we went to on our first date on the 1-year anniversary of that first date. I got down on one knee and asked her. Story 23. Fairly early on, when we were dating, we were talking about marriage, just in general terms, not about each other, and she said she never wanted to get married. It's stupid, it's pointless, it's unnecessary, etc. So I said, so what would you do if someone proposed to you? I'd run away. Fast forward 3 or 4 years, I got a ring. We had a cruise to Alaska booked, so I thought that would be a good time. After getting back on the ship, she went into the bathroom in our room, and while she was sitting on the toilet, I pulled the ring out and proposed to her. She was very surprised and said, "Yes. Oh my God. Can't run away with your pants down." Story 24. Drove to her apartment at midnight on some random night. Lit some candles on her porch while playing our song on my Bluetooth speaker. Her dad slipped up and she knew about it, so it had to be a random day to still be somewhat of a surprise. Realized afterward I looked like a burglar to the neighbors. Plans don't always go as planned, but roll with it. Story 25. I called him up during lunch break where he was studying and asked if he wanted to get married. After stuttering for a moment, he said yes. We were married in the courthouse the next week. We have been married almost 8 years now. Story 26. It wasn't anything fancy. I had been looking high and low for a ring. I finally settled on one. Nothing big, it was about $200. The actual question was popped when we were on a small holiday. Nothing fancy either. It was just a 2-hour car ride away from home. A bit of shopping and walking about in a city, visiting various sites and museums, dinner out, and then back to a small hotel. We were in bed after dinner, just relaxing and watching a mediocre movie when I dug out the ring and asked her. Now, we had previously talked about marriage, and I was pretty sure she would accept. We had bought a house together already, after all. She became very happy and said yes. About 1.5 years later, we were married. Unfortunately, 3.5 weeks too late for my mother to be there. Story 27. I'm planning on proposing to my girlfriend of 7 years during the week of our 8-year anniversary by flying her to Australia and doing it under the Milky Way. She is in school for astronomy and astrophysics and super passionate about space. Story 28. She had an internship in Germany for the summer. We are from Canada, and I went over to visit at the end. We were in Paris, and I proposed on the Pont des Arts. Story 29. Planned weeks ahead to have a picnic in the park behind our place. A few days before the planned proposal, I told her that I would be going to a friend's house to play video games for the evening. We lived together. When, in fact, I was spending a few hours with my best friend who became my best man. We walked the trail leading up to the park where my then-girlfriend and I would be having this picnic. His task was to film the whole walk leading up to it and the proposal itself. In the park, there is a tree where my wife and I first kissed. My friend and I moved a picnic table directly next to it. On the day of, everything went as planned. It was perfect. We walked hand in hand on the trail that we had walked and biked so many times before. She had no idea. My friend was like a ninja. He even wore a wig and drew on some fake facial hair with makeup. I had a whole speech written on a piece of paper. I recorded my voice audio on my phone. It was beautiful, and she said that it was everything she ever wanted and that she secretly wanted me to propose there. We now have an 8-week-old baby boy, and I could not be happier. I married the love of my life. Good luck with your proposal.